Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to look at the FIREMAPLE Blade 2 titanium stove. This is a remote canister stove, so it has a remote cable which then just goes on to your gas. It folds down very compact, and the feet here just simply pull out at the bottom and at the top, and you're pretty good to go. Now the stove is made out of titanium, so it makes it very, very light. I think it's actually about 135 grams, and when you lift this up, you can feel that it is actually really, really super light. And the only main weight on this is actually with the remote cable itself. Now you'll see here I also have what's called a canister top stove, and you'll probably be deciding as to which of these you want to go for. And it's like everything in life, there are some advantages and disadvantages. The canister tops, usually are a little bit lighter. So this particular one from Soto is like 87 grams, so it is a little bit lighter, but they are less stable. Now here I've got really, really flat ground, and I've set a pot on it. There aren't any issues at all. But certainly if you're going on camping trips and the ground that you're using the stove on is uneven, then these really are very, very unstable. I'm not going as far as to say if you're using them in the tent they're a fire hazard, but they are pretty easy to knock over. Whereas the remote canister one, then your pot as well is just so much lower, which makes it much more stable. Also, these guys here, if you're cooking, and I've got a big vestibule in this tent at the moment, but these guys here, when you're cooking with them, the whole thing is higher up and it's closer to the roof of your tent, whereas this, it is a good wee bit, a bit lower down. Now, and also the pack size, this Soto here is actually quite a long stove. You can get them that are up a good bit shorter than this. The pack size, again, is an advantage of the canister top. The remote ones just take up a little bit more space, but this particular one from FIREMAPLE, when it folds down, it really is actually very, 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 very compact. Now, this particular stove also has a preheat tube, which just vaporizes the gas as it comes through, and that just allows you to invert the canister in cold conditions, which really, really increases the gas pressure, and it also helps regulate the flame and make it more efficient and burn more smoothly. Now, at the end of the day, how fast can it boil some water? So I personally always just use dehydrated food whenever I'm coming out, and I've got this is what I'm going to have for tea tonight, and I have 400 mils of water here just in a titanium pot. So we'll get this lit up. Now you'll see there, I had to use a lighter. It doesn't have a piezo igniter. Like everything, some advantages and disadvantages. With the piezo, it is really handy, but I always bring a lighter anyway for backup. If you go out with a stove and you only have your piezo igniter, sooner or later it may fail. So you always need a little lighter for backup. So I don't think it really makes much difference. Again, it's just something that keeps the stove more simple and less chance of it failing. Now, I'm in a very well ventilated area here. The roof of the vestibule is a long, long, long way away from me, and I've actually got airflow coming through from either side, and the stove is sheltered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my stopwatch, and as soon as I set this on, I will start the stopwatch and crank this up. Now you can hear there, there's a lot of power off this. So I've been open pretty much fully at the moment. Just very quickly let you see that, if you can. There is a lot of heat coming from this. Yeah, pot's starting to lift at 315. Okay. So I have my Soto Windmaster set up in exactly the same circumstances. 400 mils of water, pot and water has cooled down. It's got its own canister here, exactly the same amount of gas in it. So we'll see how it performs. Now, the boil times are not the be all and end all, but if, for example, there's a difference or a big difference now, when you go on in the more extreme conditions, then that difference will increase. Now, the Soto Windmaster just is one of those stoves that gets really, really, really good reviews. So if the FIREMAPLE can run it anywhere close boil time wise, you know, the Soto has a number of things and design features that help it boil water quickly. So if the FIREMAPLE can run it close, then you know it's doing really, really well. So we're 242. I think with the FIREMAPLE I'll let it go until okay, it's done that now. So we are 248. So about 20 seconds. So you know, when you're out on a night's camp, does 20 seconds really matter? I mean, for me, it definitely doesn't. If you're maybe using it in more harsh environments, that time could double, but even if that doubles, it's not the be all and end all. So I think here that the FIREMAPLE Blade 2 Titanium has put in a really, really credible performance. So, do you know what? It's time for a hot chocolate. So I am gonna give you the boil time actually whenever I invert this gas canister. So while I sort of get set up, I'll let this just run for a minute, just to let the gas sort of stabilize, and then we'll invert it and we'll pop everything on and we'll see how it goes. So let's see if it can match. I think it was 245 for the Windmaster. You see there actually the flame is just sort of varying a little bit there, so that should stabilize now. Put on, crank it up a bit, put on, stopwatch going, canister inverting. And I reckon this could maybe even beat the Soto, and that is saying something. It just gives you that option. You know, if you're wanting a really quick boil time, probably won't beat the Soto now that I've actually thought that it might, but it's not going to be far out. Yeah, I mean, that's boiling at 258. So a fraction slower, but pretty close. I mean, that is impressive. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration or comparison. My final thoughts, I really do like the Blade 2 Titanium. I just have had issues with stability, and I've just found it a bit frustrating actually when I'm out camping. I always seem to get uneven ground, and the stove here, it's just not that stable. And quite often I'm actually sitting and I'm maybe actually holding the system like this to make sure that it don't get a knockover. I think also for me, using in a tent environment is something that I do quite a lot, but also, you know, this stove is so much lower and further away from the roof, particularly when you're igniting these guys. You know, it can sort of flare up, you know, quite high, whereas the lower stove has an advantage. So really just the stability is the big thing for me. The weight, you know, there's not a massive issue, you know, with the weight, and there's not a massive difference. And I just find that this will be a more practical stove for me to use, just simply because of the stability of this one. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Until next time.